And our conversation with Dean Fanelli is brought to you by Marcus & Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Let me tell you about Dean. He is a Ph.D., an expert on pharmaceutical and chemical-related technologies, and he's a partner in the intellectual property department at a firm called Seyfarth Shaw. And we have a very important topic to discuss with him. Dean, good morning.
Good morning. Great to join you.
I'm glad that you're able to join us today because this is a very serious topic. So the federal government last week came out with this plan for the distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, absolutely free and for everybody. Can that actually happen, Dean?
Well, first, when you think about free, you have to think about all the taxpayer dollars. Billions of dollars have gone to a lot of these companies with the most advanced candidates. So when we say free, we have to just understand that although, there may hopefully be no cost when we get a vaccine, there's already been a lot of taxpayer dollars that's been pumped into this. And, as you mentioned, there shouldn't be cost because, we need to get to a certain percentage of the population to get vaccinated in order to hit this herd immunity. And it looks like we're talking about 60 to 70% of the population. Mm-hmm. There's already some skepticism amongst people to get it or not. So certainly we don't want cost to be another hurdle that dissuades people from getting this. So I think it's a good thing what the CDC is doing and what the government's doing to try and roll this out so that no one that can't afford it doesn't get it, and we can maximize the amount of people that do get it.
So help me with the logistics of this. This is a tremendous undertaking, and somehow they have to make it work. How do they do it?
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, developing a vaccine, you're typically talking 10 years or so. Here we're doing it 10 months. That's a huge challenge in and of itself. Rolling this out to 200 to 300 million Americans is a logistical challenge in addition to that. And the U.S. is already the most advanced candidates, which, is unprecedented. They're already manufacturing the vaccine with the hopes that it is approved. So once it's approved, there won't be that lag time. So that's one thing that's being done to move this forward. The government's already talking to state governments to reduce logistical hurdles. And, getting this out, the DOD will be involved in rolling this out, although the administration would be done at the local level. So there's a lot of background logistical information that's being done just to get this out. But you're absolutely right. Getting this to the amount of people it has to is a huge challenge.
And a part of that whole equation is they have to want to get the shot because there is a lot of skepticism out there. Should I get it? We ran our poll here. It matched up with other national polls. There are a bunch of people that say, this thing comes out now. I'm not really interested. Give me 6 months. Give me a year until I know what the side effects might be. People are maybe rightfully a little bit skeptical of whether it would be effective.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, certainly there's a certain population that just will refuse to get it no matter what. But, there's also the people that are skeptical. And, I think that's not a bad thing. I mean, we are moving this very quickly. The science has to dictate. These companies have pledged not to release anything for emergency use until all the data is there. The FDA is the premier regulatory agency in the world for reviewing drug and vaccine approvals as it relates to safety and efficacy. So, although we're speeding this up, I suspect that once people start seeing, their friends and neighbors getting the vaccine, hopefully the number of people and the percentage of people will go up. But right now, certainly we're not where we need to be with the polls that are coming out currently.
That plan was released to Congress, last Wednesday? What did you think when you saw how complex it was?
Well, I thought, it's a good thing. Let's get this plan out. I mean, I'd also like to see a marketing plan, a publicity campaign where we see television advertisements, because I think a lot of the skepticism is just this anecdotal information. People don't understand the process. Unfortunately, this has become politicized, and, whatever one side says, the other side says the opposite. So we need to get rid of that, and we just need to educate people. I think a lot of the skepticism just has to do with people generally, as you can imagine, don't understand the drug development process.
Yeah. Dean Fanelli is with us. He's an expert on these sorts of things, and of course, like everybody else, awash in all of the information that comes at us and sifting through it to find out exactly what is the most germane issue is awfully difficult. I'm glad you're able to do it, Dean, because for most of it's just a big unsolvable puzzle. But when you think about how this would all work and the number of people that would have to be involved in getting everything distributed and gotten to the right place, the right people who are doing it, and the number of people that would have difficulty convincing themselves to get it. There are so many things that need to be worked out and that have to work out absolutely perfectly. There obviously will be snags, won't there?
Yeah, there will be snags, and hopefully, with the discussions happening now the way they are, I mean, you think about it, the government's already talking to things we take for granted. For example, developers of needles and syringes, the glass vials that the vaccine goes in. These are all behind-the-scenes logistical issues that have already been achieved. So, there is a lot of thought that's going into this process. But, I'm sure there will be hurdles. Some of the, unlike the flu vaccine, some of the advanced candidates, they will require 2 shots. Getting people to comply and come back is another logistical hurdle. You're going to need a database to match, which person got which vaccine to make sure, that the second shot is from the same vaccine. So you're right. There's a lot of logistical hurdles here, but, the government seems to be on top of it. And after a little bit of a snags at the beginning, Operation Warp Speed seems like it's been a huge success.
One of the interesting things to me about that, and you mentioned the word flu a couple of moments ago, there has been a tendency from the very beginning to compare COVID with the flu, and so there's obviously a tendency to compare the flu vaccine with the COVID vaccine, and not a lot of people get the flu shot, or not as many people get the flu shot as should, and I'm sure that they look at those numbers and they say, well, it's probably going to be that or even worse when you consider who will want to get the vaccine.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, typically around 150 million people or so get the flu vaccine, and, about 40 to 50 to 60 million actually get the flu each year. So, we need as many people to get the flu vaccine even this year. A lot of the symptoms with the flu are very similar to the coronavirus. They're 2 different viruses, so a flu vaccine is not going to help you with the coronavirus and vice versa. And the last thing you want to do, and you can get both at the same time. So, you want to make sure that you protect yourself as best you can. And at least in my opinion, the best way to start off is by getting a flu shot.
You've been watching this. It's hard to say when this vaccine comes out, if it's right at the height of the typical flu season. What's your best guess about when this all comes to be?
Yeah, my guess is by the end of this year, we have a vaccine that's available on probably an emergency use basis, which is a pre-approval basis that is for high-risk people, for example. And, as you've probably heard, you can imagine that the initial shots that are available would go to these high-risk individuals with comorbidities, frontline workers, healthcare workers, essential personnel. And I could see that rolling out the end of this year, early next year. But for the general public, realistically, we're probably talking about the end of Q1, Q2 of next year.
It's hard to trust any news coming out of China. They say that they're continuing to use their version of a vaccine, and they've got it down to 90% effectiveness. And like I said, that's really hard to understand exactly what their basis is for that. But is there anything to learn from the way that China has rolled out its vaccine?
Well, they're rolling it out to their military at this point, so although they're rolling it out, it's more limited, so they don't have an approved candidate there either. They're just, as I mentioned, emergency use. It's a similar thing that's going on there. But we're going to need as many shots on goal. So, the U.S. is banking on some of these 4 most advanced candidates to get out there. Hopefully, at least 1 or 2 of them make it through phase 3 trials and get on the market. But China's got its own development plan. They're a little different than us, but nonetheless, I don't think anyone wants to rush and put something out there that doesn't work, or worse, is not safe, because it would just be a disaster for a company to put something out, and have, bad side effects or ineffective vaccine, would not be a good thing.
And since you are so well versed in pharmaceutical and chemical related issues, when a vaccine like this typically would come out and it would have its effectiveness or its ineffectiveness, and whatever that rate might be, do vaccines improve over time? The work keeps going on maybe the approved vaccine, so they make it even better, or something else comes along. Does that typically happen?
Yeah, there's always advancements. Vaccines are a little difficult. Viruses mutate. So the flu vaccine, I think it's in the range of 40 to 60% effective. But when you think of, the typical vaccines that children get, they're well over 90% effective. So, it really depends on what you're trying to treat. Viruses, they mutate. So, it's a little more difficult, but certainly advances in drug development, they build off each other, and the more we learn, the more advances. And I can tell you the amount of research that has gone into this and where we are today compared to where we were 10 months ago, it's just, from a science perspective, just amazing.
Dean Fanelli, you've been very, very helpful. I appreciate your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being on with us. It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.